stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey, everybody. This is Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. I am your host right now, noon Eastern Standard Time, Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. I was on Kelsey Sweet's radio show this morning, 6 a.m. Eastern to 7 a.m. No.
You have reached the voicemail box of 54144.
Oops, hold on one second.
158.
Hold on one second. All right. So anyway, I looks like I'm already going to start to have trouble trying to get my guest on today. All right. What a great morning. No, but anyway, it was a good show with Kelsey Sweet this morning, Cultivating Consciousness. So, if you get all right, hopefully we are back on and you can hear us. And I'm calling our guest. And so hopefully he will pick up. All right, so hopefully everybody can hear me. I had to drop the studio and call back in. And right now I'm waiting for my guest to get back on. And
you have reached the voicemail box of 541441111.
Hold on, we're going to try to get him back on. Whoops. All right, let me see if we can add him. We'll just keep calling him until he gets back on. All right, awesome. I'm back on and I'm live. So anyway, I don't know if you heard the opening, but I'm Carrying Stones, a Digging Holes radio show. I'm Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, your host. Please support us now. Oh, good. We've got everything. Hey, we've got everything together now, I think. So so today my guest for the next 2 hours is Mr. Paul Martin. And I know Paul from, spending some time in Oregon around Richard Allen Miller. And Paul is also one of the lively characters in that area that I got to meet and have lunch with and spend time with. So I have a big fondness for Paul. And so last time I had him on, we could not get him on. Then he got on, and then, his sound went completely hackosaurus. So we had to rebook him and reschedule him. So anyway, hey, Paul, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well. I was just sitting here reflecting, on what you said about, I have a message coming in. And if this had been 200 years ago or even 100 years ago, we would have probably been called spiritualists.
Oh, that's true. No, that's super true. Yeah. And what I've been doing, so I went back. It's kind of fun. I'll talk to you briefly about this. I also kind of, I want to talk about a lot of stuff. You like to talk about a lot of stuff, but I also want to talk, maybe later in the show, if you're open to it, about Wallace Black Elk, and that, during your stint with him when you were a young guy, if he ever talked about the future. I've read Black Elk's books, and I know that sometimes because white people wrote a lot of the information for Native people, Native spirituality, that it got it was problematic for the Native people. It wasn't really fair. And
why don't we why don't we kick off with that?
Yeah, that would be great, because I want to know if Wallace or, his father Black Elk actually talked about the future and what they thought and what their prophecies maybe were. Because, we're in a time frame where a lot of the native people, are calling it the fifth extinction and, where we're at and things and, what we need to prepare for. So I was just wondering in his teachings if there was anything that you could report on.
Yeah, well, first of all, let's talk about Native American prophecy versus European Judeo-Christian prophecy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. European Judeo-Christian prophecy, God says it, so it's going to happen. Okay? And if God won't make it happen, by God will make it happen because we believe in God. Kind of a circular logic there, if you will. It's always very disturbing to me. And one of the things that Wallace said about prophecy to me is that Native American prophecy, or at least Lakota Sioux prophecy, was more of a warning sign. It was the phrase he liked to use was curve in the road. Curve in the road. Slow down, there's something coming. Now, and I think he was using that as a metaphor for a warning sign. If you don't do this, then maybe something bad will happen. And it's always maybe. Now, do you want to jump in there for a second?
Well, yeah, because the way that I've done a lot of studying with Native people. I've had a lot of Native teachers. And one thing that you don't know about is that I actually, when I was 28 years ago, I studied with a woman who was elk, family line, who was very powerful and could heal people energetically, was just beyond words. And I got to study with her for a year. So very powerful family, elk family, have big medicine, even I think, into today, quite possibly. But one of the things about prophecy, and when they call it native prophecy, one thing that I've learned is that prophecy to them is more of a vision. I had a vision about things, which doesn't mean that it's going to happen. It could happen.
Exactly. And that's why I think he used the metaphor of curve in the road, slow down. He did share some of his visions with me, but there was nothing apocalyptic like cities burning or the world coming to an end. Now, what he did say was that Grandmother Earth did come to him in some of his visions. And as I recall, he said that she said, "I love you this much," and she had sand running out of her hand. As far as that goes. So in terms of apocalyptic visions, no, he never presented anything like that to us in kindergarten. The piece with Black Elk and with your experience with working with someone out of that family line is that we have to shift from our set of paradigms to their set of paradigms. Again and again and again, as I learned from Wallace, and I worked with Wallace, he would have people come in who could not switch from a Western humanist paradigm to a Native Lakota paradigm. And I would see people just flailing, trying to make things work. And all you had to do was let go of the intellect and work with the heart. The intellect comes along for the ride, but it's the heart that runs things. And I've tried to run my life outside of work as much that way as possible. The intellect's fine; it's important. It's part of what we evolved with, but it's the heart that actually runs things. And within the Lakota system, it's the heart that is the source of the power. That's my view and my recollection of it.
It's awesome. Yeah, no, I've the other thing too is that even though, some Native people, that I've worked with and learned from, even though that there are apocalyptic type events, they're not really apocalyptic. They'll, like the Hopi say, they'll wake up and there'll be water up to their housing, the water will change. I mean, which could indicate like an apocalyptic event, a major earthquake, California sinks, and then the water rises up through Arizona,
Yep.
Or all of a sudden a big river cracks open, right? Big stream of water comes up. So we don't really know. They just know that, their visions and their potentials that could happen. But one of the other thing too is that is extremely different with Native American spirituality is that they don't do, people always ask me, like, I've dabbled in lots of different kinds of medicines in the course of my life. I've done a little bit of witchy stuff and this stuff and this stuff. And I have to tell people hands down, there isn't anything like Native spirituality. And it dates back farther than anything else. I mean, like the Hopi, they have oral history of their people through the last 4 extinctions. And they have this information. They know how things work. They also work with a lot of the extraterrestrial people, which they call their ancestors, can be thrown into that category sometimes as well. There's star families, Star Nation. Everything's a family to them. That's another thing that I really like about them. It took me a while to understand how that worked, but my teacher Bovido in 2016, he passed away. But one of the things he said is that in human blood, it's crystal. We have crystals in our blood. If we keep our bodies healthy and we eat a lot from the earth, which is very Steinerish too, right? That these minerals go into our bodies, these crystals form in our blood. And this is how we communicate with the world. This is how we send and we receive messages, is through the crystals in our blood. But plants hold crystals. They hold silica and different kinds of minerals and crystals. And this is how we communicate back and forth. This is the common ground of what we communicate with all our relations, which are all of our family members. We're all together and we're all the same.
That's entirely possible. The paradigm that you're presenting as you're going through the filter, Bridgette, respectfully, is that of a Western humanist. The perspective I would approach that from is just a simple word, mehitaquiasini, and it means all are my relations, or I'm related to all. I'm nothing special. I've got a couple of little different jinks in my DNA than the tree outside my window does. I'm more mobile than it is, but that's really, really minor stuff. They're all our relations. Now we live in a frame of time where we do have to prey on others, and that's why among the native peoples, at least among the good hunters, they will ask for an animal to come and feed their people, and when that animal comes, they will take it. The same thing with being thankful and respectful and grateful for taking grains and things like that. The West is just now starting to catch up to the idea that plants may have intelligence. There have been some really fascinating studies on that. in terms of cooperative behavior and competitive behavior among forest plants, and it's just absolutely fascinating stuff when you get into it. But in the end, yes, the Hopi do have their stories, and they have their warning. But again, if you're listening to somebody who is not presenting doom porn, there should be a maybe in there, that we do have the ability to change our trajectory if we choose to do so. So when I talk about my experiences with Wallace and what he told me, again, it's going to be road signs. Now, is there an afterlife? Yes, he talked about that. Have I seen things in the NIPI that I can't explain, but are there? Absolutely. But in the end, all of those things helped me develop spiritually, helped me develop in my heart rather than in my intellect. To succeed in this, I think you just kind of have to let the intellect go. That's my take on it, because it's the heart that really rules.
I totally agree, and it's really hard to. One of the things that Bobito worked with me, my last teacher, was constantly about balance. Is you have to be in balance of the inner world and the outer world. You know, everything has to be in a balance, and how we approach all of the medicine work has to be in a place of balance, so that we can look at it and we can make decisions about it, you know, on our own. Basically, sometimes you have to use your mind to, you know, problem solve, but always come from a place in your heart and with the connection of the earth, so that you have that's the predominant place that you want to be, because we're stewards of all our relations here.
Absolutely.
And caretakers. And so we have to take their, you know, their issues and needing help and all these other things into consideration first.
Absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And we may be in an evolutionary cul-de-sac. If that's the case, that's okay, because we'll come back in another form and become more compatible with whatever environment is left. That's just the way of life. Whether it will be more intelligent than our form is now, God, I hope so. But in the end, it will still be heart that runs everything. Look at your dogs. You know, a good dog doesn't run on intelligence. It can do tricks for you. It can sit, it can roll over, it can speak. But it runs on heart. Wow, I'm glad to see you. Wow, it's been 10 minutes since I've seen you. You're still here. That's really cool. They're running on heart.
Yeah, no, my dog has taught me. My dog is the star of my show. And she has really taught me a lot of things about a lot of things that are important and valuable, for sure.
Yep. You know, now the problem again with prophecy from our perspective is that you have to get out of the Western mindset. You have to get into the mindset of it being just like people who talk about climate change. I'm looking at a report here right now that I had pulled up. Earlier estimates were that about 94 million people in Southeast Asia would face constant flooding threats, annual coastal flooding threats by 2050. And a new study came out recently, and it's now saying that 237 million people in Southeast Asia. China, 93 million versus 29 million. Bangladesh, 42 versus 5. India, 36 versus 5. Vietnam 31 versus 9, Indonesia 23 versus 5, Thailand 12 million versus 1 million. And the problem with intellect is, again, that we can write that out. That's only 250 million people. With heart, how can we let these people die? How can we let these people suffer? With heart, we can face the problem and do everything we can to ease their suffering. That's the difference. But if you approach it from a Western capitalist materialist perspective, what's 250 million people, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. I've Bovado, so he was a Shoshone elder, medicine man, was a very amazing, worked with ETs, and they helped him to kind of morph his ceremonies that he was doing and learned to actually heal the planet, what he called the original sins, like the original bloodshed or violence, against people or each other or animals or whatever, in those different kinds of areas. And one of the things he would say is like places like Normandy have, layers and layers and layers of, really dark energies because so many battles have been fought at that point.
Yep.
And so he also talked about how, like, Yellowstone wants to blow, because it's trying to, the earth is trying to deal with energies that it doesn't really like. It's not really compatible. And he said, if you look at the opposite side of the planet, if you go right through from Yellowstone, you'll see that it's in the Middle East. It's in the Iraqi area. So Yellowstone wants to flare up because all this, incredibly dark energy is on its surface and goes into the belly and creates an imbalance, and then it has to explode, like a zit out another avenue. It has to release.
Possible. I've looked at it from a little bit different perspective in terms of just the physical manifestations. For example, on the Pacific Rim and the Ring of Fire, we have had a couple of events out here in Oregon and California that are not great. Now, you know how I feel about doom porn, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a
well, let me preface because he was one of the keepers of the Yellowstone cold era. So whenever it would flare up, he would go there, and he would, do ceremony until it would be calmed. So he used to take care of it before he died.
Okay.
Yeah. So not to create fear or anything else like that, but that was one of his main jobs that he did.
Well, what I've seen happen, when you think about in the case of these things that are going on in California and Oregon, think of a plate, because it is a tectonic plate, and think of the plate, somehow you drop the plate, but it doesn't break. It's a plastic plate, so it doesn't break. When it hits the ground, it bounces up a little bit, and then it'll rock from kind of from side to side. And if something on the left side happens, it causes something on the right side to happen. If something on the bottom side happens, something will happen on the top side until it finally just settles down to nothing. Okay, I'm trying to think of something that would be a good metaphor. Maybe an ashtray, I've seen that happen, or a quarter. Drop a quarter on a smooth surface, and you'll see this happen. And so I've seen that from the perspective of plate tectonics, and really think that that's the case. The situation with Yellowstone on the Western scientific side of it, well, the magma chamber is growing, and hopefully someone has replaced your teacher, who's really good at performing the ceremonies and keeping that more or less in check. One hopes.
Yeah, no one's replaced him. And this is kind of a fun thing. Is Emoto, when Emoto was alive, the guy who did the studies with water, and talking mean to the water, or talking nice to the water, or writing words on the water, freezing them, taking photos of them, playing music for the water. But Emoto had heard about what Bobodo was doing, and so whenever Yellowstone would flare up, he would call Bobodo and say, "Oh, I'm coming. I come and help you." He would say. Bobodo had like really great impressions of Emoto, and so Emoto would fly in, and then he would bring some of his Buddhist people, people that work with water, and they would all come, and it kind of grew. So every time Yellowstone would rear up, they'd all go there until the steam vents would open, and then everything would release, and they would stay there for as long as possible. And I remember Bobodo said that he tried to teach Emoto some of his ceremonial work for the earth healing, and Bobodo would say, "No, Bobodo, I only do water." I only do the water.
Well, there you go. We all have our callings. We all have our strengths and limitations, and it's just the way of things. And clearly, all he did was the water.
But it's super cute. It's just the stories, and super cute stuff.
For me, it's all of this stuff is deadly serious. It's ELE stuff, extinction level event stuff, and I can't say what's going to happen. And if I knew what was going to happen, I wouldn't say. All right, and I don't know. Okay, so let's get that third piece out for the CIA, so I don't get picked up in a black helicopter and drugged. I don't have a clue any more than anybody else.
Drugged. No, yeah, but the thing is like we don't really need to have a clue what's going to happen on the outside, like you said, because it's all the work that we have to do on the inside.
And bloody well better take the time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And so I was gonna, because you're the white hair. You're in the white hair bracket now for, you're the wise elder. But when you worked with Black Elk, you were a really young man, and you were kind of in your boy stage, developing. What do you think your life would be if you thought about that? Do you think your life would be radically different, have been radically different if you hadn't been on a path in where you could meet Wallace?
Yes.
I mean, what do you think your life would have been like without it?
I can't even imagine. We are, each of us is the sum of all of our life experiences. And it's always been part of the reason why I suspect that we really do have a multiverse, and that every time we make a decision, we create a new universe. And that's my guess. I'm not, talk to Rick about physics, or, talk to Lenny about chemistry, but my guess is, and my sense is, that that's what happens. When you decided to put me on the show, and I decided to come on, we created a new universe, this universe, and it'll go forward from this point. It'll have all the common shared stuff of the universe that was before that. Life can be broken down pretty much all the way, in my mind, into decision trees with yes, no kinds of decisions. I've looked at a brick wall, and I'm sure the lady who was with me thought I was absolutely nuts, but I said, look, this wall is nothing but a decision tree. Does this brick go here? Yes. Does this brick go here? No. And so what would my life have been like? Well, I was pretty self-destructive when I went there, so there's a good chance I wouldn't be here at all. maybe I would have found some other way, some other path, but certainly the path that led to our friendship would have never occurred, or probably would not have occurred. As far as that goes, it was there are always profound choices that we make in our life, and those choices are going to specifically define who we are. Simple choice of marriage, who our partner is, or whether we have a partner, whether we choose a partner, the paths that we choose to follow intellectually, the paths that we choose to follow spiritually. You could maybe draw a caricature of yourself down another path and use imagination and deal with it, but this is the path I'm on, and that's enough. The big lesson, one of the big lessons that I got in kindergarten with Wallace was literally the lesson of enough. It's enough that I'm here. It's enough that I'm breathing. It's enough that I'm happy. And by the way, my hairdresser is much nicer than you. She said, "Paul, you're going blonde." As opposed to going gray. But the bottom line
that is hysterical.
The bottom line, the bottom line is I can't honestly say, and it's a question that I really don't put a lot of energy into, because I'm putting the energy into working on me, into working on my understanding of this frame of existence, and trying to come up with what to do and where to go, recognizing that, again, it's a personal journey. It's a journey of the heart. It's not something that come out of a cookbook of anybody's religion. It's a personal thing for me.
Yeah.
Does that answer the question?
Oh, that was a fantastic answer. I was thinking a lot about, because I try to really hard, everything I do, I try to do from the heart, first of all. And sometimes I have to pray myself there. I have this simple prayer that one of my Paiute friends taught me. And, he said, when we need to be in the right place or in a good way, we just pray, Creator, help me to put me in my right mind, put me in my good mind, Creator, put me in my good heart, put me in my right heart, Creator, align my good mind with my good heart, and then start what you have to deal with. And then
Absolutely.
Even praying, ask that the Creator help the situation that you have to deal with to be in the right mind, the good mind, and in the good heart, and to align those so that when you meet it on that path, there's a greater possibility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Nothing's cast in stone. Nothing's cast in stone. In this part of it, maybe going back to the story of White Buffalo Woman. Elvis is going to help me now. The story of a White Buffalo Woman. Two young men were out hunting. You know this story, yes?
Of course I know this story, but go ahead. You're going to tell it way better.
Correct me if I get wrong. Go wrong. And they were out on the prairie, and they came across a beautiful woman, and she was there, and the two brothers approached her. The first brother approached her with lust and greed and desire in his heart, and he fell dead and rotted away to nothing but a massive warmth. He just peaked and ceased to exist. His brother approached her respectfully and prayerfully, and she received him and gave him many gifts. And then turned into a white buffalo and rode away. And the key here is to come back to your prayer, which is align yourself so that you're the good brother and not the bad brother. And the rest of the story is, of course, that we have this duality in our nature, and we have to work on getting into the good space. And the more time we spend in the good space, the more good things we can do.
Yeah.
So,
and the great gift, and she left them the prayer medicine. She taught them the prayer medicine and left the device, the prayer device, on how to connect to the universe and the cosmos, right?
Absolutely.
She left them the medicine pipe, or people call it the peace pipe, but it's actually the prayer pipe.
The medicine pipe. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
And it's
absolutely.
a big. And if you are, this is something people have to know, is if you are a pipe carrier, gone through the traditions, and the ceremonies, you have a heavy job, because anything that is not looking good, you have to pray it into good. You have to pray it to the good way. And if anyone calls you or sends you message, it would be pretty difficult in this day and age to be a pipe carrier, and that, any message that comes up on the internet that you see, you're like, oh, darn, I got to sit down and get my, my pipe medicine together and get it all together, because I'm going to be doing a whole day of prayer for everyone and everything.
So much for going to the beach today.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how it is.
The way that Wallace always put that was, he was crying for the people. You're not doing things for yourself. You're doing things for the people. Grandfather, hear my plea, I am crying for the people. Not, grandfather, hear my plea, can I please have the winning lottery numbers? Okay? And it comes back to running from a place of the heart as opposed to running from a place of the mind, of the intellect. And I am not at all against modern science. Modern science is what allows you and I to talk in this way right now. But again, as you say, it has to be balanced. And there has to be a balance, because for all things a price is paid, yes?
Yes. Yes.
That's just where that's at. The healers that are, or the medicine men that I had been talking about 2 shows ago, as part of the vestige of whatever came before. I didn't really get a chance to get into that, because, of course, time management, now that I'm retired, is one of the last things on my mind. And I am going blonde, thank you very much. The stone dreamers and some of the people who use stones are a fascinating subculture and group of the people who survived whatever happened 14,000 years ago, or what happened 28,000 years ago. And it's very, very powerful. The stones were used for surgery. The stones were used for locating people. the stones were used for locating things.
And
I've
weather.
got some stories here.
Didn't they use them to control weather too?
Well, that's the
or
rain
not
rock.
control, but yeah.
No,
okay.
they helped along the seasons with the rain rock. That was what that was all about. Again, you move from the heart to the intellect, and the people from Madison Square Gardens call up and say, "Could you cover that so we don't get rain?" You know, that was a pretty funny story when we came across that in the library. But the stone dreamer again finds a stone or set of stones that calls to him or her. Now, I'm not talking about the set of stones you get from China to do hot stone massage on your partner. These stones are usually, according to my understanding, these stones have often been hit by lightning, and they are usually out of place. So you might find a smooth river rock at the very top of a promontory, or something along those lines. And as with any other form of tool, as with any other form of ally, you typically have to put yourself into an isolated sort of stance vis-a-vis the world for the stones to work. And the ability to identify enemies, the ability to find lost items, the ability to perform surgery, all of that's been documented from the native peoples. And again, I think it's part of something that goes way, way back. Now, an interesting tidbit that I just picked up the other day is that Joseph Smith had the ability to use the stones. It turned out he was a treasure hunter, and he had a couple of stones that he would hold to his head. Lord knows where he got them, but he would hold them to his head inside his hat, and he said the stones would tell him where treasure was. And that may have been how he found the golden discs that supposedly he found. I really don't know, but this was a piece that came to me the other day that I was absolutely amazed at and flabbergasted at. But again, I think that Steiner talks about moving into the eighth sphere, where we are going to move into a place where there is no spirituality. And he in his work talks about Eruman, which sounds a lot like Saruman, doesn't it? But Eruman, who is a person who really wants to enslave humanity, and the people that I have listened to talk with this person suggest that Steiner says that he really wants that Eruman, this energy, this being, really wants to trap people in technology. Well, that may well be. That could be, again, maybe that's true, just like maybe the world's going to end tomorrow, or maybe the world's going to go on forever. But the loss of the heart and the loss of the spiritual side of things, not going to church on Sundays, but living your belief, is a very, very dangerous thing to lose. And if that happens, then my guess that a lot of these prophecies and their curves in the road will bear out in one form or another.
Yeah. No. So it's kind of interesting because you So I had a conversation yesterday with a friend of mine, and it's amazing to me, when people are going through health stuff and financial stuff, that they have a really hard time trying to stay neutral, in the whole mix. And there's a craziness that happens where they want to get like overly positive and optimistic, and they get into this, what I call savior mode. Something is going to come and save us. And so last night, people take my neutrality sometimes as negative, because, I'm not feeding into like, yeah, that's a really, hopefully that'll be really helpful for you. Oh yeah, help amp them up kind of a thing. So anyway, so in this conversation yesterday, he said, why are you so negative about the future? I said, I'm not negative about the future. But I said, your perspective on, what you need is basically taking you away from the whole, because you're like in survival. And then on top of it, he said to me, well, if things don't, if something doesn't come in and happen, and there's this, divine, beautiful savior intervention, then I don't even know what my life has been worth living. And I thought to myself, but you chose to live that life that's not worth living. And you're consuming a lot and just, looking for this whole savior mentality. And so he got kind of snappy with me and was just a little bit angry about it and kind of jumped on me. But and so all night I was thinking about, I was just thinking about, like, I needed to put my finger on something, not to justify that I'm right or he's right, but, to figure out that conversation in the heart way. How do I explain this to people in the heart way? And you hit it like dynamite. I mean, been thinking about it, and you totally answered it. And I might get emotional, but, I'm enough. I'm enough, right? What I have is enough. And that's really where the heart is. Once you get to that place, it's not going to matter so much what happens outside of you, because you're going to be in the right place when those events happen, whether they're positive or negatively viewed by yourself. But when you get to that point where I'm enough, I have enough, everything is enough, and you work from that place, then you're not working with needing to be saved, and you get out of that more, where you're just constantly running after the more. And that is what the significant changes. And so you just nailed it today. It was exactly what I needed to hear from Spirit.
Well, and the other piece of that, you can also look at it from the Buddhist tradition of attachment. Attachment is one of the root causes of suffering, isn't it? And
yeah.
So practicing no attachment, when you practice attachment, you're letting the ego get in the way. This is my cell phone, and I'm so proud of it. I don't know what the hell this thing is, Bridgette. It's this little black rectangle with silver stuff around it that I know I could never build. And somebody built it for me so I could talk to you, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful for that. If it goes away tomorrow and I never talk to you again, well, I still have the beauty of the time that we have together, the point of now, and the beauty of the time for whatever listeners are out there and taking this in. That's what we have. That's the lesson of now, and that's enough. There are so many people who talk about things like this. Now, to go back to your friend, and hopefully I don't get off track here, bring me back on if I do. It sounds to me like he hasn't learned those lessons yet. That that whatever happens is good, and whatever happens is enough. The good things that come in life are that way. The bad things are generally consequences of choices that we make to come back around to the curve in the road style of prophecy as opposed to lockstep Western prophecy. It's just for your friend. I would give him the lesson of enough. The way I learned the lesson of enough, because I'm a thick-headed.
Hey, Paul.
Yep.
We're going to be going to commercial, so I want you to tell this story when we come back. Okay. But I needed the words. That's what I needed, was to express. Oops, sorry, everybody. I guess we didn't have a break yet. So, so we didn't have a break yet. Well, we're having this. We're having like. Our universe at Revolution Radio is changing. It's actually, we're evolving like Big Bang. And so we have all these weird, like, server things going on. And are the commercials playing? Are they not playing? What time are they going to kick on? So lately I've had this weird thing where either the commercials are playing later or not. So I'm just going to kind of talk until about 1 after, and then maybe the commercials will kick on till 6 after. So I'm trying to figure out what's, yeah. Okay. So
Bridgette, can I jump in for a second?
Yeah.
And say to your listeners, yes, please help support Revolution Radio. For years and years and years, I was a disc jockey at a public radio station. And we used to do pledge drives all the time. Matter of fact, the local station is just finishing up their pledge drive today. And it makes all the difference in the world in terms of having good information sources. And to have information sources that may be a little out of the mainstream like this, but still provide you with useful information, if it makes sense. I'd urge you to pledge to Revolution Radio. There you go, Bridgette.
Thanks. Hey, we really appreciate that kind of stuff. Hey, so I want you to continue on because you're just, you're hitting it out of the park today, Paul. No, I'm just kidding. So I've had an opportunity that's kind of exciting. So I studied a lot of, mostly the hands-on work of Steiner. I did all the phenomenology stuff and nutrition, plant medicine stuff, anthroposophy, plant medicine, 3-year study. And then went to the school, learned biodynamics, did some farming. And so, people always talked about like the 8 agricultural lectures of Rudolf Steiner, but it's interesting. In most of biodynamics, there are people that don't want to get involved with kind of the spiritual culty kind of Steiner stuff. And then there's a few people that end up hardcore in some of the groups. But I've read How to Know Higher Worlds. I've read certain types of things, anthroposophy, stuff for daily life. Just different things, practical training and thought, overcoming nervousness, facing karma, the 4 temptations. I have this book on my on my shelf, but I hadn't ever read the agricultural lectures, and I've been doing biodynamics like maybe 12 years now. And I love it. I love the science of it, So recently I got an opportunity to do an 8-week webinar on the study of the 8 agricultural lectures, somebody teaching it, and then we talk about what's in it with the group. I'm pretty far out there, so this book is really far out there about agriculture, but I'm super excited because this was my 2nd week in that course, and then we read a chapter and we discuss it, and it's laid out, and we put a lot of Steiner's work together, especially the languaging that we might not understand. And it's been really helpful. It's been like a really healing thing to kind of go back and actually read some of this work that most of my work is based on. So it's kind of cool. And to have a teacher that can take you through all that, has like formal kind of Steiner training, self-studied farmer guy. And then I'm going to be taking a 4 or 5 month course on esoteric science, which was a practice of Steiner. So I'm going to be doing like that. And then listen to this. I am going to take the first ever certification in the United States for the Demeter. So hopefully I'll pass next spring, and then I can actually go out to biodynamic farms and help them to become Demeter certified. So I'm kind of really excited about this winter.
Well, I have absolute faith that you will succeed beyond your wildest expectations. I believe that will happen. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Maybe we should back up and talk about Rudolf Steiner and where he came from. I didn't really think we were, you never know, of course, when we sit down and talk, right, where we're going to go, but Steiner is one of the people that came out of these spiritual movements, Rudolf Steiner. And he was a very, very interesting fellow. He came out of the mystery schools and rose through them and has slowly released some of the knowledge and that came out of the mystery school he was associated with. He is the fellow who founded the Waldorf schools, as I recall. He was a very, very interesting man, early 20th century. Why don't you take it from there?
Well, I think he was, I can't remember exactly what the date was. A year after he did the 8 agricultural lectures for the biodynamic principles. He, from what I've heard, people believe that he was poisoned to death.
Yes, because he specifically said he was.
Yeah, his love, even though he was adept in, heavy. I mean, a lot of the stuff that he talks about, like with biodynamics and some of the planetary stuff, is very physicky. It's like physics and the soil and just how he bridges all these kinds of backgrounds kind of together. But his big love was nutrition. And he taught doctors about nutrition and about how the soil has to be energetically, spiritually, on all levels, including physically, and how to make medicines to, cure the soil of the damage that we're going to do to it. And there's also, I've heard stories in some of the movements, like, Rudolf Steiner, he was very well educated. I mean, if you read his work, you're like, this is a super educated man in lots of, practices. His love was nutrition. And then there's a whole homeopathic movement, homeopathic remedies, based on certain plant medicines, which is anthroposophy plant medicine. And you become like an anthroposophist, and they also have companies now that make homeopathic remedies that also can be like sprayed on the land too as well, but taken. And that's a branch of his work: nutrition, soil, a lot of heavy spiritual stuff. One of the most powerful meditations that I've ever learned was from How to Know Higher Worlds in Rudolf Steiner's work, I think, where it talks about, in your mind, you plant the seed of the plant, and you have to know what that seed looks like, and you plant it into the soil, and then you take the plant as it sprouts up towards the sun, watching its relationship to the sun and the forces around it, and how, what the leaves come out, what that looks like, and build it up until, it goes to seed itself, and then you break the whole thing back down to the seed that you started with in your mind.
Doesn't that sound a little bit like reincarnation?
It does. You're absolutely correct.
That's amazing. God, how could that concept possibly exist? You know, I think that he was absolutely brilliant. I think that, again, parts of our current physical science system misses so much because it's all about the numbers and it's not about the heart. And you can only go so far on the numbers, and they're useful, but at some point, it still comes down to the heart. And it comes down to the heart of each of us as an individual, and it comes down to us as the heart of a species and the heart of a planet. Are we a good heart? Are we a bad heart? Are we a greedy heart? What's good and bad, of course, but are we a greedy heart or are we a helpful heart? Are we a sharing heart? Are we a penurious heart? As an individual, as a collective 20-person tribal group, as a species, as a planet. We go back to your comment about where Yellowstone is in comparison to the Middle East. Well, gee, do we have a little bit of conflict going there? And is it over something silly like oil? Or is it something more profound than that? I think that you can look at that and see that conflict going on many, many, many different levels. And a big part of it comes back down to that basic lesson of enough. It's enough I know. It's enough that I can talk to somebody if they want to listen. If they accept it, that's enough. If they don't accept it, that's enough. If they take it and chew on it for 20 years and come back and say that's great, that's enough. It's enough. It's when I become attached to an idea, or I become attached to a person, or to a thing when suffering begins.
Yeah.
That's it. And we live in a society, to go back to your concept of balance, that is so far out of balance that it may take some kind of radical change to rebalance it. Philip Glass wrote a soundtrack for a visual montage, and I'm sure you've seen it, Koyaanisqatsi. It is an amazing film if you have not seen it. It's one of my favorites, and that's all about life out of balance. There are 3 films in the series, and I strongly recommend watching them. And try and watch them from your heart as opposed to watching them from your intellect. My dad tried watching them from his intellect, and he said, I don't understand what's going on, because all it was music and image. And it was one of those epiphany moments for me. So in any event, I'd really recommend watching that if you haven't. And if you know about it, then I'd go back and watch it again. But what are some of our experiences? Would I be somebody different if I had different experiences? Of course. Would I be happier? Would I be less happy? I don't know. What I have here now is enough. Unless, of course, you've got the winning lottery numbers.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because the more I walk this path, because it's never ending and there's always development. I mean, sometimes I think, oh, I've done so much work, and then there's that moment where I go, ooh, I kind of lost heart there, bleeped out. All right, I'm back online. Kind of a kind of a scenario. So it's always constant internal work and weighing it out. You know, are you the good brother or the bad brother? And who do you want to be? And if you choose to be the bad one, that's enough, right? You choose to be the good one, that's enough. It's all enough.
It's exactly. We again are the sum of our experiences. You mentioned Richard Allen Miller. Rick says we can write our own movies. Well, maybe we can. You know, again, I'm not going to gainsay Rick. He is absolutely brilliant, and I suspect that at some level we can. We may find that that's the case, but we certainly get to make our own choices within this physical and temporal frame. And we can choose to do that. We can choose to be what we decide to be good. We can choose to be what we decide to be bad, I suppose. I really think that those are Western terms that I don't really care for much. We can choose to be selfish or unselfish. We can choose to be selfish with our time, with our energy, with our love, or we can choose to be unselfish with it and work from that position, recognizing that whatever we can do is enough. I used to be driven by never being enough, never doing enough, never having enough. And that puts us, like our society, way, way, way out of balance. We're running up a cosmic credit card that we can't possibly pay off. Pollution, climate change, the various psychoses that we have, and it's being driven by people who have not learned the lesson of enough. It is enough to be here. It is enough in this moment to share this time with you. It is enough in this moment to share this time with all of you, and I hope you benefit from it and can find that place. Would I like to be the richest man in the world? Oh, I'm sure. You know, I'm sure it's fun. Would it be fun to jet set around the world doing all kinds of stuff? Yeah, it probably is fun. Do I need to do it? Hell no. I've got so much to work on, so much to think about, so much to do right here that I really don't need to do anything more. For some people, going to conferences makes sense. For some people, staying in absolute monkish isolation makes sense. It's the path they choose to follow. And that comes back around to the Buddhist concept of compassion, in that compassion is not tea and sympathy. Compassion is recognizing that each person has their own path to walk. Maybe you can help, maybe you can't, but you cannot be attached to the outcomes. You have to let them walk their path. And when you get to that point, then you're getting closer to the point of having enough and being enough.
Yeah, no, super, super good conversation today. So another, just was gonna, this is, I'm asking for personal reasons. No. So in my teachings, my teachers never have proposed to me in any way, shape, or form in my native teachers that there is something that's going to save us. Their teachings have always been that I need to focus in on saving myself, and maybe through that it will help emanate out into the world,
exactly. Remember that whatever society the native people came from in North America was shattered 12,500 years ago, and that whatever was here before that was ground down by 2 miles of ice on most of this continent. So it is always going to be a more personal relationship with the earth, because we were running around again in clans of 20 to 40 to 100 people, as opposed to creating the megacities that occurred in South America, that occurred in the Central American Isthmus, and of course in Europe and Asia and all of that. As a result, in my mind, the perspective is always going to be more personal. To the best of my knowledge, the Lakota never had a pope, not even a cardinal. You know, they might have seen a few cardinals flying around, but that kind of structure leads to a different kind of thinking. It still gives lip service to a personal relationship with the Creator, with Grandfather, but it gives lip service only. It doesn't focus on that. Is somebody going to bail us out? Well, that's a cosmic Deus Machina. And I haven't seen any evidence of it so far. Who knows? Usually Deus Machina is something that happens when a writer writes himself into a corner and he can't write himself out of this. I suspect we can still write ourselves out of the corner, even being a follower of Guy McPherson. I believe that at this point we still can do that. I listened to Dane Wigington on a podcast the other day, and he still says we have a chance. And of course, he knows a lot more about this stuff than I do. In my case, if we make it, it's enough. If we don't make it, it's enough. I'm just not attached to it. Deus Machina strikes me, as you go through the 5 stages of acceptance or grieving, it strikes me as one of those stages, depending on an outside force or entity to save us. No, we can't do that. We'll save ourselves or we won't save ourselves. Right now, it looks like we're so far out of balance that the correction is going to be on a geologic scale, not even on a historic scale. It looks to me like we're going to go the way of the dinosaurs. But I don't know. I could be totally wrong.
Well, even, I know Dane, so I've been friends with him for 6 years, and he's part Native, so people out there, and maybe it's what drives him to save the earth, kind of his work. But he is fantastic to listen to and brilliant, and he wants things to go in a good way. He's presenting the information to people that may be a little bit scary and terrifying, but he's doing it because of his heart, because he doesn't want to see the planet go the way that it's going, so he really does have a lot of heart when he's, dealing with the work that he's doing as well. Bhavado one of the other teachings that Bhavado helped me, because it's all about balance. My teachings from him were always about getting myself back into balance and not being in one extreme to the other. But one of the things that he used to say is that we have to stay in neutrality and balance, because the two polarity will fight each other, the good brother versus the bad brother. And he said, so you get too much in the light, and then the darkness has to go up and fight it down to a certain place. You get into too much darkness, and then the light goes there, right? And it tries to battle it out. And he said that this world has a lot of, things in it that have this continuation of the out of balance. But you want to be, instead of one side of the seesaw or the other, going up and down constantly, he said, you want to stand in the middle where everything's flush, and that's kind of like the pivotal point of where the heart is. So no matter what's going on around you. You don't flip-flop from extreme, Pollyanna to depression, Pollyanna to like suicidal, and then back and forth, but to get yourself centered so that you're in the balance point, so you're not being regulated by your emotional and mental, behavior.
Absolutely true. And I tend to agree with that. Now, I honor the light workers. I honor the people who are doing their level best to help make things better. I'm crying for the people right now talking with you, because I really don't want to see the world come to an end. Not so much for me, because I really don't matter. But what about the trees around me? What about the fields? What about the winged? What about the four-legged, the six-legged, the eight-legged? What about all of these other beings and intelligences that we are responsible for? What right do we have to take all of these guys on a Nantucket sleigh ride with us? I don't think we have a right to do that. And so when I cry for the people, I am crying for all of the people, Bridgette. I am crying for all of the people. Now, will it make a difference? I don't know. I hope so. But we are so far out of balance that, like I say, I really, this is me personally. This is nothing from Wallace, but this is me saying we are so far out of balance that we're going to have a pretty profound correction. And
I agree. This summer was like
Go ahead.
This summer was just like a huge, notification from kind of the universe. And because I was taking that wild crafting plant medicine certification, and go out and I find plants and, make medicines and kind of do my own research and then give them to people, see if they work. And it was kind of like we were able to go and collect what we could find and what we could identify and make our own stuff out of. But one of the things that happened time and time again is it all started last spring before everything really started growing. And so I could collect medicines at the time that they were ready to go, starting in spring. And then I watched everything closely out in nature, because I'd have to know when they're ready to be harvested, which ones wanted to be harvested. So I'd walk out in these areas where I was harvesting stuff in 4 big locations around kind of the Reno area out in nature. And one of the things that would happen a lot is that I got so connected, with these plants and watching them grow, waiting, for the right timing, that they were kind of like my children, and I would sit and I'd watch the river and everything else. And I literally would, think about it not being there. And so I would do a lot of prayer work around that, because it really upset me. Because one of the things that I love more than anything else on this planet are trees. And I just couldn't imagine, like, the picture, my story, without the tree. So if it doesn't matter if you can create your own story like Richard talks about, but are you going to be missing stuff in that story? And what stuff might be missing that you have to give up in order to get your story, or what you want your story, your manifestation of your story to be? What are you giving up? And maybe you should take a consideration. So I did a lot of prayer in those areas, and I would talk to the star nations and just any being that would listen. And I would just say, look how beautiful this tree is. You have to help me. You have to help me figure out how to make it a better world, that this tree wants to be here, not a world where the tree doesn't want to be here anymore.
And so coming back around to space aliens bailing us out, again, I don't think that that's in any prophecy that I have heard or I have seen. I come back around to that being part of doom porn. One reaction to doom porn is to say bad things are going to happen, and I have the answer to keep you safe. Gee, that sounds a whole lot like almost every organized religion on the face of the planet. And
that's a, when I talk to people and I talk about, because I am a guest on other people's shows, and I talk about my philosophy that has been built from my teachers about ascension stuff, like to them that doesn't exist. It's not real, and that they look at it kind of as some other type of organized religion, just like you said.
Well, okay, and I'm not saying that they're wrong. All right, I am not nearly arrogant enough to say that they're wrong, but that's where my heart puts that kind of thing. That's where my thinking puts that kind of thing, is that it's giving someone hope. If all you have driving you is a stick, sooner or later you're going to rebel against the stick. If you have the carrot and the stick, then the potential reward of the carrot will keep you from rebelling against the stick. That's balance again, coming back around to that. The hope that a person who practices doom porn offers is, I have the answer. Okay? The stick is, bad things are going to happen. Come to my seminar, spend $500, and I'll show you where the safe places to live will be for the next 100 years. Give me $4.5 million, and I'll build you a survivable lifeboat under a nuclear missile site in Montana. Whatever it is. I just don't buy into that. No, they might be right, and that might be the way to go.
Right, but I mean, yeah, so what I was thinking is, the thing, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about before, when we're enough, we don't need hope.
Yeah, well,
and we don't need a savior. We don't need any of that stuff, exactly. Because we're okay with everything the way that it is, in the way that it is.
Exactly. And then we need to recognize that we are imperfect beings working on ourselves to improve ourselves and to end suffering of all sentient beings in this frame, in this time. That's the goal. And the whole thing of reincarnation, coming around and around and around again, back to the seed, back to all of it, is that, yes, we recognize we're imperfect. We don't get it right this time. We'll get it right next time. And that's enough. It doesn't mean, well, it does. I suppose it's a cosmic credit card, like being washed in the blood of the Lamb. I suppose it's a cosmic credit card. And if you want to be a dilettante and you want to do things that are taking us further out of balance, that's your choice. And each individual, again, has to walk their own path. I try not to judge, and I do a pretty good job of that most of the time, unless the waiter forgets to bring me the second cup of coffee at Sunday brunch. Then I get kind of grumpy. Okay, but typically, again, you recognize that each person has their own path to walk, that each culture has their own path to walk, and that's enough. They will find a path at some point, maybe not in this frame, maybe not in this iteration, but at some point. To come back to your talk about being out and walking in nature, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. And what you're doing is you are projecting love, and you are feeling the love, regardless of the scientific mechanism of those beings that you're interacting with. And that's my take on that experience. The danger, of course, is attachment and forming attachment. If this is the way things are fated to be, then this is the way things are fated to be. Can we change them? Absolutely. I don't believe in lockstep prophecy. But I don't think, and I could be wrong about all of this, that there are space brothers that are going to come and save us. Again, to me, that smacks of creating false hopes to escape the reality that we're in. And we spend energy on that as opposed to spending energy on trying to bring ourselves back into balance.
Yeah. And I think, there's overall like spiritual lessons in that can be hard lessons for people that save people or if beings like that came in to save people that couldn't save themselves. I mean, would a higher evolved being for the love, right? Even if they loved humanity, they wouldn't want to just come in here and save you. They would want you to stop being big babies and get up on your feet and walk, Yeah.
Exactly. This is a whole... For years, I didn't get tough love. Okay? I really, truly didn't get the concept of tough love. And of course, with everything, again, you have to recognize that everybody walks their own path, and you have to recognize that as imperfect beings, we don't always get it. And the ability to practice tough love can be colored by selfishness, by fear, by hate, by greed, by any of the things that we really don't particularly like. So when I hear about somebody practicing tough love, I always will question, are you practicing tough love because this is what you think this person needs, or are you practicing it because some dogma is driving you to do it, or are you practicing it because you gain some kind of personal gain in terms of power over this individual, or revenge, something along those lines? But yes, tough love is probably what we're going to be going through on a planetary scale here real soon. But who knows? I don't know. I can't say beyond that. For me, the thought that may be happening is okay, because who I am and what I am is enough. And I can't really go much beyond that in terms of helping other people, except to present the concepts and to present the ideas to them, and then let them work through it in their own way.
Yeah.
I'm sounding like a priest. I apologize.
No, it's funny. I love when, I remember there was a period in my life when I was young, and I would, look at people and go, wow, that sounds like, one of those one-hand clapping kind of philosophies. And then what's happened in my life is that I have people that say things like that to me, like, wow, that sounds like a really one-hand clapping concept.
Yeah.
And it's true. There's a part where you start connecting with your heart that connects you to the infinite, the stream, the great computer in the sky, the creator, that what happens is that I think you understand those philosophies deeply.
Yeah, better. And the key again is looking at them with love and looking at them with your heart, understanding that the intellect is there, but it's your heart that will unlock the true inner meanings. I've been reading Laird Scranton recently and Walter Bosley, both interesting writers. And Laird is the guy I tried to talk about a little bit last time. He is sleuthing whatever common culture was here before we had the event that shattered that common culture. And he's found the same things among the Chinese, the Buddhists, the Dogon, and the Egyptians. He's found very, very similar root pieces. And so it's not the first time we've been around this circle. It's not the first time we've been on this rodeo. And we'll see where we get with it this time. Hopefully to a good place with a good outcome. But if it is, then great. And if not, then we'll, drop back 10, punt, and try again. Elon Musk goes to Mars. Good. We've got Martians now again. So on and so forth. But is somebody going to come in and bail us out? Well, if we can't bail ourselves out, why would we be worth saving?
Yeah, that's kind of like my view about it. And Bovido used to keep bringing him up, but I still really miss him. He was a super good teacher, just super good human,
Yep.
But he used to always say, we're going to do this the hard way or we're going to do this the easy way, and it's up to you. Even
Absolutely.
the last video message he sent when he was dying was, you're going to do it either the hard way or the easy way, but it's you that's going to do the work. You're going to do the work in order for that to happen.
Sooner or later, the work will get done one way or another. Yeah, that's again coming back to that concept of the Buddhist concept of compassion. Insofar as you recognize that all the tea and sympathy doesn't do a person any good, recognizing that they have their own path to walk and helping them get on with it, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I had kind of a revelation a couple weeks about empathy. And I think because, most of my life, the only way that I could figure out what was true or not is if I had like an empathetic relationship with something, that I could actually feel it,
Mm-hmm.
And then so I had this revelation where I realized that empathy is, kind of in the category with lack and need. Because, if you're being empathetic, you're aligning with something on a level where you might be broken or you need something, right? Because you're not enough. So here's this word again. And that
right.
I realized I really had to start pulling my empathy back into balance because it was causing some poverty consciousness in my life, because there is a bit of, insecurity about me and my place in the outside world. And so I usually stream out empathy energy to connect up and find a common energy ground with whatever's in front of me. And so
remember that there is a difference between empathy and sympathy. Empathy is something that you feel within yourself. Sympathy is something that you project. And as such, being an empathetic person is being an open person, is being I'm going to use this loaded term and you can smack me, okay? But it's being a loving person. A sympathetic person is projecting their emotions and their values onto you. Oh, there, dear. Please have a little more tea and sympathy. I'm so sorry you're going through what you're going through. it's an intellectual exercise as opposed to an exercise of the heart, which is what empathy is. Now, describing it in those terms, then I again ask you whether you're what the purpose of feeling the empathy is, and I think you'll find that if you are being truly empathetic, that you're okay and you're doing good with it. If you find that what you're really doing is projecting sympathy, then you need to find out why you feel like you need to be sympathetic as opposed to empathetic.
I think you're completely spot on, and thank you for the. One thing I love about having a radio show is that sometimes it's my personal therapy show.
Well, the beauty of it for both of us is that this is a time when we can stop and think about things. Remember what I said about intellect, but we can stop and work on things. We're sitting around a pot-bellied stove, drinking a mug of ale, and chewing the fat. And so yes, and we're hoping that there are listeners out there, and that they're getting good stuff out of this. If there's somebody out there that says, "Oh, Paul is so full of it, it's not even funny," that's fine. I'm cool with that. Okay, I don't know whether I have the right answers, but I think we work down towards interpersonal truths every time Bridgette and I have these conversations. That's my view, Bridgette. And so, yeah, thank you. Because it is always a two-way street.
Yeah, and so it all started a while back, maybe even like 5 or 6 years ago when I first met Paul. And I would go up to where Richard lives, and I'd go visit him, and I would drink amaretto on the rocks and smoke bowls of weed with Richard, and we'd have some pretty, interesting conversations. But there would always be in the trip this, lunch or dinner with Paul, and then that eventually led to whenever I visited, just Paul and I would go out to lunch and talk about just the kind of stuff that we're talking about now.
Yeah, it's a different path, and it's okay. Amaretto and good bud, which Rick does have, is a good thing also. It's okay for some people. Me, I don't smoke, I don't drink, I outgrew all that stuff a long time ago. I am trying to be in balance with the universe as it is, and every time I smoke or drink, I'm knocking myself out of balance.
That is very true. That's true. I accept that.
So,
yeah.
So there it is. So yeah, and I love Rick to death. He has his own path to walk, and he is a very interesting person to listen to if you ever get a chance to do it. Again, as I'd say, if you get a chance to dig into Laird Scranton, I think he's onto something in the same way I think Tellinger is onto something, and Hancock and the rest of those guys. I think they're scratching at the surface of what came before, and that's kind of a different focus than your focus, but it's one that I'm deeply interested in, and we'll see where it leads in the time that we have. But I'd strongly recommend Scranton. He's written a number of books. Very, very interesting guy, and he's finding the commonalities. I first touched on commonalities, Bridgette, years ago in music. Like I say, I was a disc jockey at a public radio station, and I pioneered a format that blended classical music, jazz, rock and roll till they told me to knock it off, but classical, jazz, folk, world music, and I blended it all together and found the common threads in all of that. Kind of a pre-Pandora, so to speak. And that was an expression of this underlying heart assumption and heart feeling that, again, it's all connected, that we are all connected. Again, the Hitakuyasan, we're all related. And it is all connected. And these guys are on the right path. Now, was it space aliens that created us? Maybe. The latest genetic suggestion is that about 200,000 years ago, modern humans came out of Botswana, which was, to me, a little bit interesting. But that's cool as far as it goes, and it's the best that we can guess with our imperfect knowledge. And as long as we don't take that as absolute dogmatic fact, we're okay with it until something else comes along. Now, there may come along some proof that space aliens created us. If they did, maybe they'll come back and fix things. Maybe not. And if they come back and fix things, maybe we'll pay a terrible price. Or maybe we'll pay a great price and we'll all move forward. Maybe, people always talk about the great culling. Well, okay, there's cullings in every herd as far as that goes. From that perspective, we look way more like bacteria in a petri dish. We're choking ourselves to death. Maybe they'll wash out the petri dish and turn us loose again with new medium. You just don't know. You can't know at that level. And I'm highly suspicious of anybody who says that they do know. And again, it goes back to creating hope. Ascendancy. Well, yeah, I guess I sort of believe in ascendancy as a concept, because I do believe that we keep cycling through and improving ourselves every time we come through the rodeo. At least hopefully we improve ourselves. You can go either way in virtually every belief system, and that's good. But hopefully we're going up and not going down.
Yeah, I agree. So, okay, if you can share, if you want to share, is there a way that you, like Wallace taught you to pray, that you've developed, or that how you pray now to align yourself? Or is there anything that when you get really off of balance that helps you to bring you back to your heart? And if you would want to share that, because we only have like about 4 minutes left. So how would you go about it? Yeah.
Here it is. Grandfather, I am crying for the people. Again, I don't cry for myself. If I'm out of balance, then purification might be the choice, or quiet contemplation might be the choice, depending on what I have access to. But calming myself, because my prayer to myself is to cry for the people, not to cry for myself. Okay, and that's not a slap down or anything like that, but that's what I was taught. Grandfather, I am crying for the people. Hear my prayers. My job is to center myself. The Lakota and many Native Americans, come back around, and we only have a couple of minutes, is their thought of the body is that it's a rope, and it's a receiver, and it receives energy from elsewhere. So the body that has the good food in it, like what you go out and find, and the good herbs in it, like what you find, are all better receivers than people who go out and eat Rick's favorite Doritos. If you're eating Doritos and not eating good food, well, you're creating one kind of rope as opposed to a person who is eating well. And that's what I can say about it. You know, Grandfather, hear my prayers. I am crying for my people. I am crying for the people. That's the prayer.
Awesome. All right, everybody. So we're at the end of the show, and it went by super fast. Felt like we only talked for like 15 minutes. It was 2 hours. Anyway, we're going to have Paul back on because I know he's a favorite. I get a lot of emails and messages, you know, after people hear you on the show because they just really love you a lot. And I think, you know, you have great words to, you know, teach us all something. And I really appreciate that you came on the show. It took me years to get you on because you had to retire first. And so anyway, people can find Paul Martin if they want to on Facebook. He's on Facebook. So you can connect with him if you have any questions or just want to make friends or, you know.
You bet. Let's make friends because I don't know any of the secrets of the universe, guys. And that's it. And if you come to me with a problem, I'm going to say, well, fix it.
Yeah.
It's pretty simple. You know, but yes, and my little icon is my take on a chicken hawk. It's a baby chick with an ammo belt and a shotgun.
I know, it's super funny. Yeah. So anyway, this is we're finishing up the second hour of Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show. And again, I'm Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. I'm your host. And today is the Wednesday edition, which is noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Studio A. And then I also have a Saturday edition from 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the thumbnail is the bee flying towards the flower. If you're on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And also, reminder, we're in transition, so please, 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 please support us. All of us here at Revolution Radio work our boozoolies off for you. So anyway, thanks, everybody. Thanks for being on the show. And, yeah, it's all good.